Welcome back, everyone. Here we are in episode number 3 in our lecture series / study called Echoes of Tyranny, where we are tearing apart two of the greatest dystopian novels ever written. George Orwell's 1984 and Aldous Huxley's Brave New World. And then, and most importantly, then we're applying this age-old wisdom. We're looking at the insights and we're looking at their predictions to evaluate where they are already showing up in our modern world and where they could potentially cause huge problems in our society in the long run. So in episode number 2, just taking a step back, we peeled the layers of Orwell's 1984 in regards to specifically totalitarian regimes and the means to achieve complete control, according to George Orwell and his world. But now it's time for us to switch gears and dive into Aldous Huxley's Brave New World. This novel presents a vastly different yet equally terrifying way to control society. Control through pleasure. Might seem counterintuitive on the surface, but this episode is going to explore how the world state, as it's called in Huxley's novel, through a prescribed drug called soma, rampant consumerism, and how these things work together to create this blissfully enslaved society. It's almost like enslaved in that putting someone in prison, they go into the cell, and you give them enough drugs and enough material things just to keep them happy and satisfied. Just enough. Don't even have to lock the door behind you anymore. And that's what we're looking at here. See, the people in Huxley's world, they live in a sort of matrix, I guess you could call it, where at least on the surface of things, there is no brutal big brother with a bat threatening physical violence, but rather there's this society that uses complacency, superficial happiness, and physical gratification and ease to control people. But before we dive into these themes, let's get to know our central characters here, and specifically today we're going to focus on our hero, Bernard Marx. He's kind of like this misfit in paradise, so to speak. And again, imagine Bernard Marx, mid-30-ish guy, doesn't really stand out in society. Uniformity is the norm. He's not particularly tall, shorter than most alphas, which is his social class, I guess you could say. This height thing's a big deal for him because he kind of feels inferior even within his own group. Feels different right from the gate. Kind of the same way that we saw with our protagonist in 1984. So this physical stature of his is a point of insecurity, and it leads him to suspect that his conditioning during the birthing process might not have been as complete, or something went wrong when he was going through it, because he's slender, almost frail, and he contrasts really sharply with the very robust, the athletic builds that the world state promotes, sort of in the same grain as Hitler and his master race concept in the book Mein Kampf. Bernard's dark hair, it's neatly kept, but his face has a perpetual look of like uneasiness on it, as if he's constantly wrestling with thoughts that he really shouldn't even be thinking, and he kind of knows he shouldn't be thinking. And notice once again here this fundamental similarity between our hero Winston in 84 and Huxley's hero in Brave New World. Both figures, part of this immense and all-powerful machine where everyone is forced to conform with everyone else. If not, they face ostracism, torture, or maybe even being erased completely. Yet mentally, intellectually, as these two figures in both novels look around and see things, they sense that things are wrong, that they're all wrong. And mentally, Bernard, he's this cocktail of contradictions. He's an alpha plus, which means literally his social class is top of the social hierarchy, but he doesn't fit in. He's dissatisfied with the very superficial pleasures that everyone else seems to adore. And while others are blissfully indulging in their drug holidays called soma, and I'll use that word from now forward, so get used to it. This drug takes away, basically, it's like a miracle drug for them. It takes away all anxiety, sadness, pain. And when you're high on soma, there is this blissful feeling. Oh, what should I call it? Almost almost numbness. And it destroys any desires or passions for bigger things in life than the mindless entertainment that they're constantly being bombarded with in their society. And Bernard finds himself craving something more, though, something meaningful. He feels this gnawing emptiness that the drug just can't fill, and it leads to this sense of isolation, almost paranoia. And Bernard's critical thoughts about the world state are extremely dangerous, and he knows it. This awareness makes him both defiant and fearful. Notice again similarities with our hero Winston. And in many ways, the inclination of these thoughts are going to lead to their downfall in a different way. So Bernard tried to play the part of the alpha. He really did. But no matter how hard he tried, he knew deep down he didn't belong in that group. It just didn't fit him. And he didn't fit into the world society around him. Huxley even writes, quote, Bernard gave his orders in the sharp, rather arrogant, and even offensive tone of one who does not feel sure of his authority. This assumption of superiority was not entirely genuine. Bernard's physique and mental state were a source of insecurity for him. Despite his alpha status, he felt like an outsider in a society that prided itself on sameness. I love the last sentence there where he says, he felt like an outsider in a society that prided itself on sameness. Just think about that. Do you ever have that same feeling even in our society as we go through life here? Something for us to ponder as we go forward. Let's begin our discussion of Brave New World and this world state, which it is called, and its social engineering. And the world state, it's a totalitarian government, and it maintains control by ensuring its citizens are just basically content, not fulfilled, not joyful, not pushing the boundaries of their best self. They're content. They're all right. They're okay. Sometimes when you're walking down the streets or you go into an office and someone says, "Oh, how you doing today?" "I'm good." Good not meaning, "Wow, this is great. I'm loving my day." It's just, yeah, whatever. And that's kind of the state of mind that the world state wants to keep its citizens in. And catch that because it's important. The world state, unlike the party, the quote-unquote party in 1984, which enslaves its people by keeping a watchful eye on them at all time and ruling over them with a brutal stick. Well, in Brave New World, we just want to keep everybody happy and comfortable. When someone is content, they're generally satisfied, and in the world state, they are generally satisfied people. I mean, they're not in a terrible predicament, and they're not in a great one either. And so they're satisfied with what they have. They don't really want more. They don't really desire any change. It's just almost a state I think I would describe as acceptance, where one feels that their current situation is good enough, sufficient. In Aldous Huxley's Brave New World, citizens are kept content by this drug, as we've mentioned, soma. It numbs their emotions, keeps them in a state of artificial happiness and satisfaction, And that contentment prevents them from something really important: questioning their society, seeking personal growth, or even challenging the status quo. This drug is highly effective in all of those. And being content may seem positive if you're not dissatisfied. However, some people get psychotic, type A-ish. And no matter what they do or what they have, they can never be content. Obviously, that's not a good state of mind either. We hear stories in our society right now how some people just can't ever let go. And, as in most things, we need to strike a balance in life. However, the contentment can be highly problematic, especially in the context of Brave New World or similar scenarios. When people are content, they lack motivation. They don't question injustices so much. They don't seek deeper meanings in life. Things like creativity, innovation, progress. They stagnate in a society where everyone is just merely content with being content. And additionally, this contentment is and can be and is used as a tool of control, as we see in the Brave New World. And I would challenge you to consider maybe we see that in our own world today, where the government ensures that the population remains complacent and unquestioning, and it maintains power. It prevents any potential rebellion or change. Because in the world state, being content is synonymous with being passive or indifferent. And it allows those people that have the power to maintain the power, manipulate things for their own ends, and control the population without resistance. And unlike Orwell's grim and oppressive Oceania, the world state appears utopian on the surface. I mean, if you would have traveled and seen the vision of Orwell's Oceania and compared it to the world state, my goodness gracious, that in Brave New World, everything is clean and it's orderly and it appears on the surface to be ethical. Utilization of technology and psychological manipulation. The citizens are just accepting of everything, their societal roles. And really, what do? They just seek pleasure above all else in whatever role they may have. And this engineered stability is achieved through a very rigid caste system and relentless indoctrination. Not just from birth, but from the womb. And we'll get into that later. Because, from the moment of conception, individuals are destined for specific roles. And if you read the novel, we have the alphas, the highest, the betas, the gammas, the deltas, and the epsilons, the lowest of the low. And every class is conditioned with very predetermined roles, statuses, ideas. And through this idea that they call hypnopaedia, or sleep teaching, citizens actually learn to just love their servitude and accept their servitude. Phrases they throw at them constantly are like, everyone belongs to everyone else. And a phrase, a gram is better than a dam, which is a gram of soma is better than an entire dam. It's part of society's conditioning, emphasizing the importance of soma. And to avoid any negative feelings or discomfort, or that you don't belong in the role that you're in. And this quote reflects that idea that in this dystopian society, it's best that we all just live numb and dumb with soma, versus experience any dissatisfaction or any unfulfilled hopes, dreams, and ideas to be something other than what you are. So the solution to life problems in the world state is to drug yourself into a zombie stupor of superficial complacency. Because when you're in this state, there's no need for oppressive, powerful surveillance or physical control because, the citizens, as I mentioned with the metaphor before, they go into their jail cell and they lay down and they go to sleep. You don't even need to close the door and lock it behind you, because nobody has the energy or the will or the desire or the passion for anything beyond what they have. They're all just too busy simply zombie walking through life. And they just have no interest in rebellion. Too much work, too much of a hassle. Not gonna put any of my own personal stuff at risk for anything that's better. So what a different approach than 1984. The goal and control are the same, but the means to achieving that goal differ dramatically. Huxley even writes, quote, "But in epsilons," one of the lowest caste levels in the novel, by the way, said Mr. Foster very justly, "we don't need human intelligence. Didn't need and didn't get it. But through the epsilons were low grade. They were so conditioned that they liked their work. The principle of mass production at least applied to biology. The perfect slave," Mr. Foster concluded, "is the one who loves his chains," end quote. And this passage highlights that dehumanizing effect of the world state and their constant barrage of social engineering on everyone in society. The individuals are not only stripped of their own individual potential, but they are conditioned to embrace and love the limited existence that the world state has placed upon them. Sure, the epsilons, a lower caste in society, they're conditioned to lack intelligence because according to the world state, they don't need it. And sure, despite their low status, these individuals are conditioned to enjoy their work, creating just that perfect slave for the powers that be. This reflects an ultimate form of control where individuals are not only unaware of their oppression, but they're also content with it. When you read of this group, you may be thinking, those poor, poor fools. Think about it. Think about it deeply. I think I can make the argument that many of us, if not most of us, are modern day epsilons. We're slaves. We're willing slaves to the corrupt capitalistic democracy that we find ourselves. And yes, I know capitalism is the best form that's out there, but when it gets corrupted, when it gets abused, when it gets this unholy alliance of government and business, we got a problem here. And we find ourselves today, and the American dream at its very core, maybe not initially when it was conceived, as a farce or a sham for so many. It's a scam to create a compliant and witting batch of slaves, dangle the carrot out in front of them, but it's always out there in front, and it keeps them chasing things. And we ultimately, most of us end up in jobs. The statistics are overwhelming that huge swaths of this country are doing jobs they don't like and would rather not do. But the upper classes, they would never dream of doing those jobs or holding those jobs. This is the world state in Brave New World. I want to linger on just for a moment some parallels between the epsilons, the worker bee class, the lowest class in Brave New World, and modern citizens of Western civilization, particularly in the United States. Well, because number one, I'm from the United States, but I bet you could apply this to almost every Western democracy that's out there. And just off the top of my mind here, conditioning from childhood, just as the epsilons are conditioned to accept and enjoy their predetermined roles, millions of Americans are conditioned from a young age to follow a very prescribed path. And let's walk through this path. It starts with the education system, where public schools often prioritize conformity over critical thinking, fostering a mentality of compliance rather than genuine intellectual curiosity. You got by, sure. You learned some of the basics, sure. But let's be honest, our public schools are getting worse and worse in every objective measurement, in reading, in math, and in the sciences. We are average. Heck, we spend more time, energy, effort on athletics, clubs, and social groups in our schools than actual learning. We create armies of intellectually average students that are ill-prepared for high-level, high-thinking jobs and careers. Oh, and by the way, one aspect of high school learning that is very conspicuously absent in the education of our youth is financial literacy. A recent survey just of young adults, I've read this, to self-assess their financial knowledge. They said only 18% of high schoolers and 26% of college students said they have a somewhat high or very high knowledge of finance. Oh, interesting. We don't teach that in school. It's just the one thing, money, that every human being has to interact with constantly. Isn't that very convenient for banks and credit card companies and loan companies that young adults have little to no understanding of how debt and money work, as they are about to get bombed by sky-high college expenses, which they can't afford, be given credit cards that they don't even understand how interest and compounding interest works. Oh, we're so lucky that we have our financial institutions so ready on the spot with student loans and credit card companies for them, don't you think? After the initial conditioning of our schools, which are failing miserable, we spend more money than any country in the world on school, and our outcomes are pathetically average. Then the next phase is, as we move through the American dream, is, initial conditionings. Then we get funneled into higher ed, often now taking on significant debt to obtain degrees that are still deemed as quote unquote necessary, the key into the middle class. But the degrees are so expensive, and the payoffs of getting a job with these degrees, the return on investment is getting slimmer and slimmer and slimmer for probably 80% of the degree programs that are out there. And this system just perpetuates the cycle of working to pay off loans, often in jobs that don't align with one's passions or interests. Because once you're sucked into debt, you have to make the money or you lose everything. The follow your dream mantra in pursuing a degree often is becoming a nightmare when the money that's spent for the degree doesn't even come close to handling the debt. Or maybe the blue-collar middle class has been thrashed with rising costs, but income is not keeping pace, or good, high-quality blue-collar jobs are being shipped overseas. However, the pressure to conform at whatever white-collar, blue-collar, college grad, not college grad, but you still have this pressure to conform to the society's expectations. Getting a job, buying a house, owning a car, getting married, further entrapping individuals into this consumer-driven cycle in a career they don't like, buried in debt with no option but to continue because there are bills to be paid, kids to raise, and life happens. Not good. The other issue in the world state is consumerism. This is a modern slavery. This consumerist cycle becomes a form of slavery because in this world, it's not just physical chains, it's financial. And even most importantly, I would probably say societal expectations. From a young age, individuals are taught that they need to equate success with material possessions, whether it be clothes or cars or jewelry or whatever, and to measure their worth by their ability to earn a living and pay the bills. This mindset discourages the pursuit of life passions and fosters a sense of contentment with the status quo. How many people do you know, maybe you're one of them, that are doing a job, you're treading water, you're waiting for retirement, you got bills to pay, the income's good, the job is safe, and you keep doing it. Much like the Epsilons in Brave New World, who just go about their day by day by day in those chains. We in our society, we're bombarded every second of every day with images and sounds and influencers and Hollywood stars and movies that we need to buy things, because having things will make us happy. That's what they try and tell us. That's what they tell the people in Brave New World. Materialism is important. Consumerism is important. You find happiness in those things. So for every word you read in Brave New World that hits that, think of, and you say, wow, what a terrible existence. I think we're living it. And if I be so bold, in my own opinion, we are living it. So the form of contentment the world state attempts to condition its citizens with is almost identical to our Western democracies and capitalism. Look, I wouldn't want any form of government, I've said, and that I've been out there, that's been out there, than a democratic capitalist state. I mean, it's the best we got. It's not perfect, but it is. But let's not be naive. And let's not be silly about the dark underbelly of this system. Let's not pretend that everything's perfect. Because if you do, and if you don't pay attention to this system, you can get sucked into the vortex of it. If you're not already there, being satisfied with simply getting by and adhering to these societal consumeristic norms, it's very dangerous. As the overt control seen in dystopian novels is one thing, but when we just willingly surrender, that's another. Because when people are content with their chains, they don't have the time, they don't have the energy, they don't want to exert the effort to challenge the systems that are oppressing them. Whether it's financial burdens, societal expectations, or the consumerist culture that we live in, this contentment keeps the population docile. Much like the citizens in Brave New World who are kept in line, not through force, but through the illusion of happiness and satisfaction. Now it's time to talk about Soma, considered the ultimate escape in many ways. And this is the most potent weapon that the world state has in maintaining control. So let's talk about Soma for a minute. Soma is this wonder drug. It's the government's most potent and perfect tool for maintaining control. This drug provides an instant escape from any discomfort that you feel, anxiety, unhappiness. Whenever a citizen feels a hint of dissatisfaction, they take Soma and they're transported to this blissful, stress-free state. There are no side effects. There's no hangovers. There's no consequences. It's just pure, unadulterated contentment. Soma is more than just a drug. It's a symbol of this world state's ability to suppress any dissent. It ensures the citizens remain docile and compliant. There's no need for rebellion when a drug can so effortlessly eradicate unhappiness. No clubs, no pitchforks, no guns, no riot gear required whatsoever. Huxley even writes, quote, "And if ever, by some unlucky chance, anything unpleasant should somehow happen, why, there's always Soma to give you a holiday from the facts. And there's always Soma to calm your anger, to reconcile you to your enemies, to make you patient and long-suffering. In the past, you could only accomplish these things by making a great effort and after years of hard moral training. Now, you swallow 2 or 3 half-gram tablets, and there you are." End quote. Soma is the ultimate pacifier, eliminating any need for personal growth, struggle, or emotional engagement. And think about it. In your life today, If there was such a perfect drug where you could just go through your life as it exists, devoid of real stress, anxiety, anger, frustrations, and any of those negative moments, and you could take a drug and you're just zoned out, content, not really thinking of anything. But you do have to give up a few things. You have to give up personal growth. You have to give up struggling and striving for things, having big goals, big dreams, big ideas, or having any type of really close emotional engagement with other human beings. You'd have to give those up, but would you? Would you do it? Would you trade in what could be for the easiest thing? That's the thing with Soma. That's the thing that we need to consider as we read through these novels deeply. Not the superficial rush to judgment on them. But, throughout human history, drugs, they've been used as a means of escapism. That isn't new. It's a way to detach from the harsh realities of life for some. It dulls pain, physical pain, but it also can dull psychological, emotional pain, and to flee from burdens of consciousness, at least temporarily, from the opium dens of ancient civilizations to the hallucinogens of shamanic rituals, and even alcohol, staple of societies for millennia. Drugs have always offered this alluring escape, whether to forget grief, numb physical pain, transcend monotony of daily life. Humans have sought out these substances that allow them to retreat, at least temporarily. Drugs have been and always will be an aspect of our humanity. I don't think it will ever be otherwise, but here's the kicker. You can very quickly move from creating an enjoyable night out, having fun with families and friends, relaxing, to becoming a raging cancer in your life. We're in the addiction, and you'll give up literally everything for the next drug, and coping with life becomes impossible without using it. There's the kicker. But a reliance on drugs for escapism comes with really devastating consequences that Soma actually causes. And it causes it by the world state, and they know it does, because drugs, they dull our senses, they diminish our connection to reality, and most critically, they impede our ability to be a growing individual and human being with goals and dreams and aspirations and questioning things. When we turn to substances to avoid facing our problems, we're giving up the opportunity to confront challenges head on, and to learn and grow and just evolve as human beings. Instead, we become passive zombies in our own lives, choosing numbness over the richness of fully experiencing and overcoming life struggles. So that use of drugs as an escape is not just temporary, it's a destructive force that erodes the very fabric of humanity. And by choosing to numb ourselves, we're bypassing that emotional and that psychological process essential to our development. Because, if we really stop and think about it, it's really through struggle that we gain resilience. Through sorrow, we can understand joy, and through failure, we learn the true meaning of success. And Soma is robbing the citizens of the world state of these human characteristics. And in turn, they become slaves to the drugs. Wherever things get hard, you take a gram or two or three, and then the real world just evaporates. It's not that type of prison, in many ways, could be worse than the type of imprisonment we see in 1984. So just as in Brave New World, taking drugs, is a phenomena that's been amplified in the world we have certain influences, especially you look at big pharma. In many ways, society has legalized and even institutionalized this form of escapism. We're prescribing drugs for everything from anxiety and depression to attention deficits and obesity. And while these medications can be life-saving for some in some instances, for many others, they're a shot at a quick fix, an easy way out of addressing some underlying deep-seated issue that requires time, and it takes effort and sometimes discomfort, sometimes incredible discomfort to resolve it. But when you come out the other side, you're at a whole different level than you were before. Take, for example, this widespread use of Ozempic, which is the hot drug of choice in the United States with weight loss. The pharmaceutical giants are making billions and billions of dollars on this. So rather than encouraging individuals to adopt healthier lifestyles through diet and exercise, we now are offering a drug, just the latest in a series of drugs that we're going to miracle reduce weight. And so we offer this drug, and it promises results basically without effort. And this reliance on pharmaceutical solutions, it teaches us that taking responsibility for our health, emotions, or actions is unnecessary. No, you don't need to do that as a person. The government approves drugs, and they work with the corporations to make sure they're quote unquote safe, and we can literally just medicate our way out of these problems. But this approach is insanely perilous. Oxycontin, when we saw the Oxycontin epidemic, and we're seeing very, very serious long-term effects of the ADHD drugs and a plethora of different anxiety, insomnia, stress-reducing medications. Because when we rely on drugs to fix our psychological or physical problems, we're not only undermining our own personal agency, but we're also diminishing the value of personal responsibility. We become, like the citizens of the world state, passive recipients of a quick solution rather than being vibrant, active participants in our own well-being. This mindset is extremely dangerous for the United States and everywhere around the world because it promotes dependency. It discourages self-improvement and ultimately leaves us all ill-equipped to handle life's challenges. So we're seeing this dependency spiral. And maybe you know somebody who was on medication A, which created side effect B. So medication C is prescribed to take care of the side effect of B, and which in turn created side effect D. So drug E was then prescribed, et cetera, so on and so forth. And before you know it, someone who was taking one pill is now popping 10 pills a day in this cascading drug supply to quote unquote feel better. Far too many people are ideologically captured into pharmaceuticals, which then creates a physical dependency, which in the long run can ruin lives. But it sure will do one thing guaranteed: it will make pharmaceutical companies richer and richer and richer. Because relying on drugs to solve our problems is not just a matter of convenience. It's a path that leads to the erosion of personal growth. And when we're choosing these easy routes of medication over hard work, we deprive ourselves of the opportunity to develop the skills and resilience we need to navigate the complexities of life. We have too many people in society today who just can't take anything hard. They can't take it hard physically. They can't be challenged mentally. They can't be challenged intellectually. They just stop, quit, close down. And besides just that, dependency on drugs, it kind of creates a sense of helplessness where individuals feel powerless to affect any real change in their own lives without chemical assistance. And in the long term, this creates a society of individuals that are content with superficial solutions because they're easy. They never strive for their full potential and remain perpetually numb to the richness of the human experiment. just as in Brave New World, where soma is used to pacify the population, our modern reliance on these pharmaceuticals is a similar form of control. Make no mistake, government, big government, our government agencies are in bed with the pharmaceutical companies. We know this for a fact. If you just look at pretty much every board of director member or high-ranking individual in the pharmaceutical org chart, you're going to find that they worked in government. There's this revolving door thing where we will have FDA officials leave government after an administration ends, run over, get paid a couple $100,000 to be on the board of directors or some consulting position in a pharmaceutical company, which in turn they expect them to work with the government to get stuff approved, know what's going on. And then after a certain period of time, they'll turn around again and they'll go back into the government system to reconnect and refresh their skill set on the government side. We see this all the time. And so we have to be aware, not just of illicit drugs. That's a whole nother level. I didn't even get into the methamphetamine or the fentanyl. Just horror stories of what's going on with that. But whether the drug is soma, oxycontin, heroin, cocaine, fentanyl, whatever, the drugs rob us of human drive, passion, intuition to be our best selves. And no wonder that the world state wanted its people high on soma all the time. But our war on drugs may be one of the most abysmal failures known to humanity in America, and many would say might even have been a front. Now, maybe that's a little too conspiratorial, but still, the truth is, drugs in their legal or their so deemed illegal format can and have been used as tools of control by the government. So you and I, in our own lives, we must be very, very diligent to have full intellectual control over our minds. And the way to do that is to stay as relatively clean of drugs as possible. Or at the minimum, heck, enjoy a weekend drink now and again. I do it, and nothing wrong with that. But never, ever let any drug or alcohol of any type prescribed by a legal drug dealer or some street corner drug dealer control your life. That is a recipe for imprisonment. All right, so here we go. In Huxley's Brave New World, the world state's economy thrives on consumerism. Citizens inside of this society, they're conditioned from birth to be relentless consumers. They're driven by a constant need for new products and experiences just to maintain that happiness. Because happiness, drugs, and materialism, those are the things. And this cultural trait isn't just about stabilizing an economy. It's a sophisticated form of social control in the world state. And by keeping the people focused on material things and pleasure, they ensure they have no time, energy, or inclination towards anything else. But the truth that the citizens of the world state miss entirely is that an endless desire for superficial things leads to intellectual and spiritual poverty. As being singularly focused on material wealth, it's going to detract from life and living life. I think we all know someone somewhere who's just so one-track driven by money. Everything is money, 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 money. And usually their life almost always is lacking. It's lacking depth and emotion and passions. But let's fast forward to our modern world and the parallels. From the clothes we buy to the cars we drive, the houses we buy, the vacations we take, Consumerism is ingrained into our very identity. Don't believe me? Just go to Instagram or Facebook or your favorite social media. Check out the posts. The clothes we buy, the vacations we take, the food we eat, the cars we drive are all prominently displayed all across social media. I mean, I could go on, but the mantra is clear. The more you have, the happier and more successful you are. And I want to show everybody how happy and successful I am. That's not a natural inclination. It's a mindset. It's a mindset that has been carefully cultivated and reinforced. Much like Huxley's dystopia. Will Rogers said maybe my favorite quote of all time on consumer culture. Quote, too many people spend money they haven't earned to buy things they don't want, to impress people they don't even like. This quote highlights the futility of superficial pursuits and how they distract people from what really matters. But this consumerist culture, it comes at a deep cost. Because just as in Huxley's world, where the citizens are docile and distracted, Americans are often too focused on acquiring the next big thing to notice that they're being controlled. The more we consume, the more we work to maintain that consumption. And the cycle continues. Work, earn, spend, repeat. Work, earn, spend, repeat. The numbers of Americans living paycheck to paycheck is staggering. The number of Americans who couldn't last a month if they lost their job is scary because they have nothing in savings. The number of Americans who have nothing in retirement is jaw-dropping. But when you're in the spin cycle of make money, spend money, make money, spend money, it leaves almost no room to reflect and to think and to challenge the system that is encouraging that behavior every single day. Instead, what we do is we just complain how we can't keep up. It's the government's fault. It's the 1% billionaire's fault. Without seriously reflecting inward on our own life choices. Almost like when you're a drug addict. We're obsessed with things and comfort. And we've allowed our minds to be controlled by that. Consumerism in America has also redefined our understanding of success. The quality of our relationships are measured by financial and consumer success. The fulfillment of our passions, what kind of vacations we can take, what kind of cars we can drive, our impact on the world. But how often and how many times do we try and emulate the images that we see on social media? It's a very narrow definition of success, and it drives people to work insanely longer hours, take on more debt, and sacrifice their well-being, all in the pursuit of this ultimately hollow, shallow ideal. Moreover, the environmental and the social impacts of this consumerist mindset are just staggering. The constant demand for new products leads to overproduction, waste, the exploitation of natural resources, exploitation of labor. And, just as Huxley's citizens were conditioned to believe that, quote, the more stitches, the less riches, we're also conditioned to think more is always better, and if it's not worth, no need to save or reuse anything, throw it away. The amount of garbage that the United States creates as the number one producer of garbage is absolutely staggering. Materialism is just, when we let it run wild, can be one of the most controlling influence of an entire civilization. So in conclusion with this, that rampant consumerism is not just a reflection of some personal ideals. It's ingrained in our social construct in the United States of America. Huxley envisioned in Brave New World that materialism could literally, you could get people to do anything for material wealth, for material things. And he may actually just be spot on here. Because it keeps us chasing some ever elusive happiness, and we're distracted from other meaningful aspects of life. from questioning the systems that benefit from our endless consumption. And it's time to stop and ask ourselves, are we truly living? Or are we just simply consuming? And if it's the latter, what have we sacrificed for this mindset? What have we sacrificed along? What have you personally sacrificed working nonstop to make cash to buy things or to pay off debt? Or maybe you bought a house that was more than what you could afford. Whatever. We've all made dumb financial mistakes, every single one of us. But what have we sacrificed for this consumerist mentality? I think it's good for all of us to just pause and think on this. I think as we get close to the conclusion here, I think an obvious question is, sure, you say don't be consumed with consumerism and being a slave to the system, but how am I supposed to do this? I got bills to pay. I got what? Do you want me to give up my home and just live on the streets and just do whatever? No. I mean, it's a very, very valid question. How do I get out of this? I mean, from my personal experience and my own personal things I see, I know of only one way out. And there's steps in the processes, and to get there is no easy task, but you need to be debt free. You need to owe the banking system, the financial institutions, nothing. You need to be able to say, what I have is all mine and nobody can take it. So you need to pay off all your debt, and I do mean all of it. It can be done. There's all kinds of resources out there to help you do it. For example, Dave Ramsey's Financial Peace is the one my wife and I use to get debt free, and I highly recommend that one. But there's all kind of them out there for you, and you should check those out. You see, there's something that happens when your mortgage is zero, your car payment is zero, your credit card bill is zero, your student loan debt is zero. Well, the miraculous thing that happens is you get to keep your money instead of giving it to a bank. And no longer do you have to just do a job just because you have to do it to put food on the table. You're not going to lose your house because it's your house. You're not going to lose your car because it's your car. You're not going to, who cares if you have a credit score anymore anyway, because what you have is money in your account. See, once that happens, you have the capacity to be more precise, to be wiser in your decisions. And you can choose things that you do, not based on, oh my gosh, am I going to be able to pay my bills this month? But you're going to be able to look and say, wow, this is what I want to do, and this is how I'm going to be able to make it happen. And whatever you got to do, that'd be my one recommendation to break the cycle of consumerism. Consumerism in this country and every country is based on debt. People, you and I, the average person, does not make enough money to buy all the things that are being bought. Trillions and trillions of dollars are spent on credit cards every single year. So people buy things that they can't afford. That is what drives this economy. That's what drives this consumerist mindset. And even if hundreds of millions and billions of people live that way, you don't have to do it. So get debt free. Then you can evaluate all the rest. Okay. I'm going to get off my soapbox there. I know it's a painful topic for so many people because you're in a tough spot and you might be in a really tough spot. All I can say is my wife and I were in a tough spot, but we pounded on that debt. I mean, we got violently angry at the debt. I got violently angry at writing money and writing payments to mortgages and car payments. And it took years. It took a long time to get out of debt. And I can definitely say it's not easy, but it is possible to get off that consumerism rat wheel. And once you're off, you'll never want to go back on. It's almost guaranteed of that. But let's just go back to our initial analysis, A Brave New World. So we analyzed the elements of Brave New World, and we uncovered this society of pleasure and consumption. Not despotism, fear, not oppression, but complete control. The same. And these insights into Huxley's novel, they're not just academic. They help us recognize the potential dangers of prioritizing comfort and consumerism over freedom and individuality. In general, you and I, we don't get involved enough when we see injustices and overreach by the government. We just let it go. We zombie walk. I'm guilty of it. You may be guilty of it too, because as long as things are generally pretty darn good or we're content, governments tend to know they can slowly and methodically take control in the world. And we don't want to raise a fuss. We don't want to lose our job. We don't want to lose friends. We don't want to lose family over things. But, the problem with easy comforting and contentment is that eventually the forces of totalitarianism, they go too far. And once they get it, it's too late. So consider how having things so easy that we just let stuff go is not how we should be acting in the face of a government overreaching our freedoms and trying to grab our personal rights. All right, so we've covered a lot of ground today, and let's just do one final comparison of the tactics in our two novels that we're studying so we can see the differences and look at some pros and cons. So we look at 1984, George Orwell's 1984. They are strong-armed tactics, we'll call them. The pros or the positives, if you're a dictator, of course, is the direct approach is highly effective in instilling fear and compliance. Get straight smack up in the face of your citizens and tell them this is the way they're going to live their life. In this world, dissent is quickly identified and it's very easily eliminated by maintaining strict control. But here's the thing. Here's the thing for those societies that use strong arm tactics. Number one, you create a society that's based on fear. And it leads to widespread paranoia and mistrust. It can easily and does and throughout history has led to big resistant movements of these oppressed individuals who finally are just sick and tired of being under the thumb of a brutal dictator. Now, on the other side of the coin is Brave New World. And we'll call them societal distractions rather than strong-arm tactics. And so what are the pros for this? Well, I guess in general, you could say our citizens are happier. They're more content. They have a low likelihood of rebellion because that control is maintained very, very subtly. And so that makes it less prone to flat out resistance. And the results, though, a superficial society that values pleasure over engagement leads to loss of individuality and critical thinking, as people are conditioned to avoid discomfort and dissent. Now, think about those. Think about those on your own. Which one's closer to the United States of America today? Understanding these control methods, and this is why I've spent so much time on them, is crucial because they reflect real-world dangers of how power can be maintained through different means. Orwell, fear-based, could be seen in our modern-day surveillance states where governments monitor, suppress dissent. Huxley's pleasure-based control can be observed in our consumer culture where distractions and superficial pleasures, they kind of prevent us from engaging and thinking critically. And, by exploring these, we can better recognize times in which freedom of thought and expression might be under attack in our own societies, whether that attack comes through the fear or through pleasure. The result's the same: control over the individual and suppression of true freedom. The result is still the same, whichever tactic is used. So again, what do you think? Which novel, which approach towards totalitarian regimes is the United States more tilted? Or if you're in Germany, or if you're in somewhere in Canada, or wherever you might be, what are you seeing in your world? Is it more Orwellian dystopia, or is it more Huxleyan version of a dumbed down contentment form of control? Of course, that is ultimately for you to decide. This is for you to ponder, and hopefully you're reading along these novels, so you're getting like the full picture. Of course, I'm just grabbing things as I'm going through there, trying to just guide us through these two amazing works. And by the way, I do just need to mention once again, in the show notes, I give you a full reading plan. So the chapters that in every episode that I'm going through in this series, I'm putting down a reading so you can break up the reading in both novels simultaneously. And I think it's great if you just read it and listen to this, read it, listen to this, use your own reading. And I think you'll have such a deeper perspective of everything when you get to the end of it. But I hope you'll join me in that, and hope in the notes, in the comment sections, you'll let me know what you think on these things. But in the next episode, what we're going to do is we're going to go down yet one more level. We're going to delve into the sinister mechanisms of control depicted in 84 and Brave New World. And what we're going to look at specifically, manipulating the truth. Oh my gosh, truth. What is truth? How does truth work? We're going to deep dive into this. Can we even figure out what truth is? So we're going to talk on 84 about Newspeak and Doublethink, and the chilling realities in Brave New World of Hypnopaedia and genetic engineering and social engineering. And of course, we'll keep track of our heroes, Winston, Bernard, and go deeper into their rabbit hole as their lives spill out before us in the novels. But we'll compare it at an even deeper level, the tactics of blurring the lines of truth and reality. That's going to be our main topic. What is truth? What is reality? Do we even have such a thing in our mind? And how can this controlling narratives and truth seize the population's hearts, minds, and bodies? As George Orwell once said, quote, "In a time of deceit, telling the truth is a revolutionary act," end quote. So we're going to try and look at the truth in our next episode. So if you think you know the truth, think again, because next week we're peeling back the layers to reveal what's really behind the curtain. So stay curious, stay critical, never stop questioning, and see you on the other side. Take care.